has been the range and the size of the company. So this wasn't very much planned in my career, but I did start off at a very small size company and then kind of went off to a medium sized company, which was Inkbox, and then a very large corporation like two of the big banks. And so with that experience, I learned how to work with different lines of businesses and people. So that's been very rewarding in my career. Now, the topic of UX design has been quite a trending topic nowadays as companies are realizing more and more the value it brings to products and services. But just to take a step back and give a little intro on what it is, I wanted to start by saying we've all used an app and browsed through a website or walked even into a store like a bank or an IKEA. And some of these experiences have been great. Some have been okay, and some have been pretty bad. User experience focuses on the understanding of users. So really thinking about their needs, their abilities, their values, so basically what they need and want, and frustrations and pains. So for example, if something's not working as expected, or if they were going for a specific thing and they could not get that. So this is a quote by Nelson Norman Group, which is a great source to look into if you're looking to learn a little more about UX. And it says, user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. So really thinking of how people associate with products and services. User experience is a person's emotions. So think of their attitudes, their thoughts and feelings about using particular products, systems, and services. For example, how you're feeling and what you're thinking about when you're using an app like Instagram. This is a great image that I used to always refer to. It's by Peter Morville, and it's called the UX Honeycomb. And it goes through a few really interesting words to think about when you're working on a project, a product, or helping a company improve their service. And that's usable, useful, desirable, valuable, findable, accessible, and credible. So creating a great user experience would be to answering all of these questions. So those requirements of a good user experience start with these basics. Can they use it? Can they find what they're looking for? Does it serve a need that you have? Do you want to use it? Or is it just a matter of being forced to use it? How is that experience? Do you find it valuable, and is it accessible to you? Which stems off into a whole other industry of accessibility, which is something that I've been sharpening my skills on, as accessibility and design has grown into another industry of its own. So UX and the future. As I mentioned earlier, companies and organizations overall have started to really realize the true significance of customers' impressions on their brands. And you may have noticed some brands are redesigning or creating completely new experiences on their digital interfaces. Initially, UX was focused primarily on digital experiences, but quickly it branched out into the physical world as well. You've probably heard the term customer experience a lot, and that's another layer to definitely consider as well. So with customer experience, they're really responsible for the experience that a customer has across every touch point with their brand. So that could be from the service on the phone to their in-person experience in a store, and anything digital as well. So having that consistency from phone to app to in-store and giving that great customer experience. And so the customer experience includes user experience. So those are just some points to look over: customer service, physical environments, the product themselves, and then the digital experiences. Now, customer experience versus user experience is something else to really think about. A lot of the times people kind of blend them as one, but it can also be a little separate, although they go hand in hand. The customer can sometimes be a user, and the user can sometimes be a customer. This might be a little confusing, but sometimes a user is just a user and not a customer, and sometimes a customer is not a user. So think of the user using a product. For example, they're on a website because they're looking for a specific product that they want to buy. So they're just browsing. Whereas a customer is the user that performs the purchasing transaction. So they had, for example, a subscription to something. So they're frequently purchasing on a monthly basis, for example. UX has also become quite the umbrella term. There are so many different roles, whether if it's UI designer or UX strategist or UX researcher, and even myself, I've been working as a product designer. And as a product designer, I have to perform all of these lines of work. So that includes user research, usability overall, and you ensure that that's a great experience by conducting usability testing sessions. For those of you who don't know, that's basically testing your product, whether if it's the finished project or just a prototype, testing it with different people to ensure that it's usable. Content strategy, information architecture, which is basically the backbone and structure of an experience. So for example, on a website, you have like a navigation with the menu. What are all the layers of information that go under each heading? That's really the backbone of your product. There's visual design, which Rahim had mentioned in the beginning, UI design, which is user interface design. So that's what the user would see on a website, the beautiful font, the colors that they're engaging with, that gives people all sorts of emotions and feelings. And then there's interaction design, which you can see here, this umbrella is having some movement and spinning around. And that's the interaction and motion design that you see. So this is a quote, maybe some of you have seen it before, but this really speaks to what UX really is, and it's a quote by Steve Jobs. It says, design is not just what it looks like and feels like, which is really the UI and the UX of things, but design is how it works. So how that experience functions and how it helps solve problems for people. So that was my little brief introduction to user experience and some bits of customer experience. But as we've transitioned during this time with COVID-19, a lot of us are working from home, and if we're not working, we're studying from home and learning from home and trying to stay inside as much as we can. But we obviously want to grow our skills and keep connected and grow. And so it's really important, and this comes from a place of like being on the computer for 9 hours a day as I'm working from home for Wave at the moment. And something that I've really come to value is the work from home station that you create for yourself. So it's really important to ensure you have a space that's comfortable and functional, a spot that can keep you focused, inspired, and organized. So even if it's as simple as putting up a picture and ensuring you have enough room to have 2 screens so that you're not overwhelmed with everything on one. And I found that creating that station for me has kept me really on track during the day. So for those of you that are designers right now, or even aspiring to become designers, it's really important to, make the best of this moment and take advantage of all of the design tools and resources that we have available to us, such as Figma. Figma is a newer design tool that a lot of design teams have transitioned to using from Sketch. They're now moving on to Figma, and that is mainly because of its collaboration feature. So as you're working from home, it's really easy to collaborate on one file without sending things back and forth. And Figma has really solved that problem for us. And communication and oversharing has become so significant every day as as I'm working from home more and more. With that lack of in-person communication, we've really relied on tools like Slack and Zoom, like we're having this webinar right now, to see each other and hear each other and talk about what we're working on and how we're feeling and see how we can help each other learn and grow. And another thing that I would say that has been super important during my time of trying to stay focused while I'm still engaging with my colleagues is blocking some time off for deep work. And by deep work, I mean focus work. So whether if you're, let's say, trying to learn more skills in UX and you're reading Medium blogs and Nelson Norman articles on how to start user research and how to do that all online, it's really important to block off at least maybe 2 hours that you can dive deep in that, because when it comes to UX, you really want to ensure you're not distracted and you're focused on all of the information that you're absorbing. And of course, with any profession, self-care. Do avoid burnout, especially during this time. We can go heads deep into our screens and kind of realize that the day just flew by and we were only on the computer. So self-care is very important. And this goes for people that, you're not a designer, but you're any profession and you're staying at home right now. I highly suggest you do a lot of readings. If you're a aspiring designer or even a new designer, I put NNG here as Nelson Norman Group. They're a great reference and resource for intro to design. And even when you scale up and you're a more senior designer, it always has great information for you to learn and grow from. This is a perfect time for designers to also work on a personal project. So let's say, for example, you hadn't started applying for jobs as a designer yet, but you're ready. This is a great opportunity for you to start your own project from scratch. And this could be something small. So for example, you could think of like one of your favorite apps that you may have used on a regular basis, like the Starbucks app. You could pick a portion of the app and come up with a redesign, and hopefully you're making those designs on research-based solutions that maybe you conducted surveys on online or done user interviews over the phone, and based off of those research findings, you redesign that Starbucks experience to solve problems that maybe Starbucks hasn't solved yet on their experience. And webinars like this one, there are also so many other ones available online, whether if it's design related or just something leisurely like cooking or fitness classes. It's definitely a great time to take advantage of those. There are also tons of online courses that are free that could help you kickstart a career in UX, or even if it's something you want to stem off and learn to contribute to your current role, which might not be in design at all. And again, self-care no matter what. I just wanted to add a few extra points on some healthy offline break ideas, since I've been talking so much about, the digital experiences and being on the computer. But it's a really important time to also get offline, put your phones away, turn off the TV, and start cooking. You could make a healthy snack, healthy meal. I know there was a webinar again with JNF with a registered dietitian. These are great opportunities to look at YouTube videos, even though that's online, but to seek out recipes that are healthy and nourishing for your body, move your body. There's so many online classes or even stretches in general that you can do on a mat and don't require equipment. And socialization is very important too, although again, this goes to be online, but it's more so just talking and engaging with people. There's great tools like Zoom and FaceTime and WhatsApp that allow you to go on video calls with people. And quiet time and meditation is very important too, especially when you're doing work like UX. You're constantly either talking to a lot of people or doing a lot of primary and secondary research on a project. And that takes a lot of cognitive load and energy. So it's really important to then kind of step away from your work and have your thoughts together and meditate. And I would say this is also a perfect time. I'm sure you've all seen all these tips from different people online, like Instagram, saying that they're cleaning and organizing during this time, but it's definitely a great tip. You'd be thankful for it later. And read. Reading is key, especially in UX. There's tons of Medium blogs and ebooks that you could reach out to, like Norse and Nelman. I keep saying that, it's Nelman. Norson keeps having posts on different UX books that you guys could be reading right now. And Medium has tons of lists of different books. I can also share a link with you guys that shares what those books are for people that are interested in learning more on the details of user experience design. So thank you so much. This presentation was quite brief, as UX can get very complex, but I really wanted to focus on kind of the basis and what it really is, as sometimes there's confusion in the industry on what being a UX designer entails. So if you have any questions, it would be great if you guys could drop them in on the QA, which is on Zoom, and I can answer them. I've also just included a link to Designers and Coffee, which Ruchi had elaborated on earlier. It's a design community that I've created for different designers at all stages, and we aim to come together on a bi-monthly basis and do hands-on work. Given the circumstances, things have also headed towards more the virtual experience, but things can be done.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Dorothy. And yeah, definitely opening up to questions in the comment section. So maybe we'll give a few minutes for people to think about their questions.
Okay, so one question was to expand on the honeycomb model that I had shared. I can definitely do that. So I'm just going to pull it up. So the honeycomb model was a visual reference that Peter Morville had created, who was a UX guru, and he called it the honeycomb. Let me actually share my screen again so that I could have the image up. Let's share. Okay. So here, this model goes through a few words and basically creates basic questions that we want to ensure we can answer when we're going through the basics of a good user experience for our products and services. So we want to ensure that it's usable and that it's useful and that it's desirable. So meaning users don't have any difficulties and troubles actually using their product, or if it's a service. So for example, let's say you go into a bank and the customer is using an ATM machine. Are they able to use it and have that end-to-end experience and do exactly what they were trying to do? So for example, taking out cash or putting in their check. Useful if it solves the problem that they had, or they are able to achieve the goal with using that product to begin with. A good UX would ensure that the product is also desirable. So we're not just making people feel forced to use the product, but they're also enjoying the experience that they're having while they're on it. And then it basically goes through other words like valuable, findable, accessible, and credible. And that just really shows you in a honeycomb as a visual reference, just the things you really want to ensure as a basis for what your product should be, basically. And by findable and accessible, things shouldn't be hard to find. So even if you want to unsubscribe to something, which I'm sure we've all been there, it shouldn't be hard to unsubscribe to something. It's a given. And with findable, you want to ensure that the user isn't having these frustrations towards your company and your product by feeling like they're being fooled or tricked by having things hidden. So a really great example, which I'm totally comfortable sharing, is when I worked at the bank. Won't say which one. They had a lot of their fees hidden, and that was something that they had intended to do on their user interface design, and something that the design team had ensured this year was to ensure that those credit card fees, for example, were always visible on the product cards when they went on the credit cards page, because you don't want to hide such crucial information from customers. So everything should be honest and upfront. And credible, of course, you want them to have trust with your product. So no lies. And so the basic requirements of good UX, these questions that I had gone through stemmed from this honeycomb. So can they use it? Can they find it? Does it serve the need that they have? Do you want to use it? Do you find it valuable? And is it accessible? So also even like visually accessible. You don't want to make poor UI decisions like having dark text on a dark background. You want to ensure that contrast ratio is strong enough so that things are readable no matter what. And let's see. Is there a difference in approach in user experience for a product-based business, so like retail and banks, versus service-based, nonprofits, etc.? Service-based. I would honestly say there isn't a huge difference in terms of like the basis that you would start off with. Most and foremost, it's having a good and honest experience. So whether if it is at a retail store and at a bank, you want to be able to help your users and your customers, whether if it's online support or in person. Just having like the team available to answer any questions. Obviously things will vary, whether if it's like a retail store, you might have like music and decor and things that contribute to the user or the customer experience in that case, versus an app that might just need to look visually clean and appealing. But it all really comes down to ensuring that it's usable, it's bindable, really this honeycomb visual that I refer to over here. But of course, it varies depending on what the product is, if it's online or if it's offline. I hope that answered the question, Jen. Dorse. Who hires a UX specialist? Larger companies only, or can a small business with a single website also retain one? That is a great question. So early on in my career, I was very nervous looking for a job as a UX designer. I was unsure about this myself. I thought I would only be needed at a large corporation because I wasn't sure that a small company would be able to hire me or if they would even have work for me to do. But like I had mentioned, corporations and organizations have come to realize the significance of UX more and more and more. And the first company I worked for was actually just 5 people, and I was their UX designer. I feel like there is always work to do, no matter how big or small the company is. There's always things to improve on. There's always usability issues that might come up, or things that you might learn through your customers that you would need to improve on. And a UX specialist would essentially go ahead and solve that. So I definitely feel that small businesses are now adding UX designers, researchers, and specialists to their teams. And it's definitely not a new thing. I was working in those small size teams about 4 years ago. Yeah, feel free to ask any more questions since we have time. And I will also share some links afterwards with Rahi to share with you all if you'd be interested in looking into them further. Hi, Dorsa. From the final phase, what are the next steps towards a full rollout? So correct me if I'm wrong. Do you mean the final phase of like having become a UX designer and now ready to apply for full-time roles as a designer? I'll just wait. I mean, I could elaborate a little bit on something that I actually was meaning to talk about, and that would be a design portfolio. So as I was applying for jobs as a designer, I created a design portfolio for myself. And there are so many memes on different design Instagram accounts about how your portfolio essentially never finishes because it's an ongoing process. And you sometimes look back on your work and you were like, oh, why did I even make that decision? And you want to just go and fix everything. But a huge word of advice would be to even create a deck of your work that you would be willing to share with different companies that you apply for, that you consistently add your different projects to. So a huge part of after the final phase of having become a designer would be to apply for jobs and ensuring that you have sample work that people can see so that they can see that you really think about things and present your process from start to end and how you came up with those solutions. And a huge thing that has worked very well for me in my interviews has been picking just one case study and really elaborating on that from like the initial primary and secondary research that I conduct on the problem and going through all of my iterations and sharing those user interview findings so that they can really see that you made design decisions with backed up reasoning, not just for, you know, biased reasons. So I would say having a portfolio or a design deck of at least one project in depth will really come in handy in your job search. I hope that answered the question. Great, I'm glad. Something else I actually want to mention, um, as designers, depending on the company that you work for. So for example, I was at the bank and then at a company like Inkbox, which was around 60 people at the time, more creative company, and I guess you'd call them a startup. Um, when I was at Inkbox, I was able to share all of my work online with no matter who it was. I was able to showcase it and go about and share that work that I did. Whereas sometimes at larger corporations, you might have an NDA. And as a designer with constant NDA projects, it becomes quite challenging because you feel like you don't have anything to share on your portfolio. So a point that I had in those work from home tips was use this time to start a small project, whether if it's like a little redesign on an app or a website, and have that opportunity to showcase your work and your creativity and just like your method of design thinking and have that on your portfolio just as a backup. I've been in a situation where I had so many NDA projects that I was proud of, but I of course wasn't allowed to share it. So I leaned back on those projects that I had worked on my spare time. So now is a great time to look up some, even like some pre-existing projects that are online, and you could kind of take a different approach to it and start it from scratch on your own.
Okay. Okay, so maybe we'll give another, oh, there's another question.
Yes, so Terrence says, you mentioned improving an existing project. How do you incorporate new elements? Do you test it first? Amazing question. Yes, you test it first. And there are definitely different methods of user testing. So it could be either sending out a survey, conducting user interviews. Right now, it would have to be over the phone since we can't see people in person. So maybe setting up a user script and going through those open-ended questions with different people over the phone to learn about, what their frustrations are with the product, what they like, what they don't like, what they wish it could have, and have them just elaborate on the experience. There's tons of resources online on how to conduct user interviews over the phone to improve the user experience. And there are other tools like usertesting.com. So if you actually had, let's say, a link to a website, you would be able to paste that link into user testing and create a test. And you get those results so quickly on usertesting.com. And you can see how people engaged with the product. So it's kind of like a video. And then you observe how they used it, and then you can physically and obviously see which areas of the site they're struggling with, and then you could have reason there to improve that section of it. And some of those user testing sessions, you can actually ask people to think out loud and share their thoughts as they are engaging with the product, which is a perfect method of user testing. And yes, you would improve that existing product based off of those research findings. Would it be helpful if I shared some links on those resources on conducting user tests? I'm guessing yes. I can definitely add that in with all the other information I mentioned earlier. Okay, great. Yes, I will do that. It's a good time, even if you're not completely on your own right now, as we're self-isolating. You can conduct those user interviews with 2 meters apart and practice with whoever you're at home with. And I would say the key with user interviews is to ensure you're asking really open-ended questions. So you never want to phrase the question to have them answer no. So you would want to just say, describe your experience using, for example, I keep saying the Starbucks app, as opposed to saying, what annoys you about the Starbucks app? So you really want to just openly ask and see, are they annoyed with it, or do they actually love it, and why do they love it? Yeah, no problem.
Mm. Okay, so I think we'll give it another minute or two if anyone else has any other questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap up. So let's give it about 2 minutes if anyone else has any questions to send them in. Okay. Okay, I think that that was really great. Thank you so much, Dorothy. And once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. And I will definitely be sending over all the links that Dorothy will share with me to ensure that you can all get them, especially the link to Designers and Coffee. And yeah, thanks again on behalf of everyone for speaking to us tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Riffy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dorsa.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.